Hey, before we do anything else, we have to thank our sponsors, Smile Traveller, who have not only sent me to Barbados, which is very lovely, but also decked me out in this extremely fashionable cap.
Yeah, no, Smile aren't just good at making George look good, they're also specialists in worldwide sports travel. And this winter, they'll be taking England fans to the Caribbean for an exciting white ball series.
Hello, and welcome to Ask George post semi-final edition.
Hello.
How are we? All good?
Weary but fine, thank you.
That is the cricketing summer. I'm sure you just jump straight into this with quite a nice broad question. Well, not a broad question. I think quite a nice non-Englandy question. David Thomas asks, do you think the best two sides have made the final? Something that doesn't always happen.
I do, actually, yeah. For a start, they're unbeaten, and that should count for something, shouldn't it? So I think that is really relevant. You could argue that Australia are really good and stuff, but they did lose a couple of games. No, I think the best sides have reached the final, and it could be a really fun final, but India are favourites.
And I guess on the same note, bringing into that conversation, Mike asked, let's be honest, it'd be ridiculous if this team made the final and England look a pretty ordinary team unless it's an absolute road. Why are they so obsessed with fielding first?
I thought it was the right decision yesterday. I thought
rain forecasts? Yeah, forecast influence.
Yeah, rain forecast. Rain did come on and off. I should level with people. I didn't go to Guyana. By the time we found out that England were definitely in Guyana, it was very hard to get a guaranteed flight back, and the hotels didn't seem adequate or safe. So I made the decision not to go to Guyana. So I did yesterday's game from TV. I just wanted to be honest. In terms of whether they were right to field, I see that there's a lot of focus on this on social media. I think that decision was right. I think that with rain around, you probably want to be batting second so you can manage the Duckworth-Lewis a little bit. And equally, batting second in a day-night game, particularly if the game is going to be stretched, you might end up batting a bit later under lights with a bit of dew around. The pitch might be easier to bat on, less in it for the bowlers, maybe, particularly if the cutters stop working. I thought it was the right decision. I thought what happened yesterday is they played a side that were actually quite a lot better than them. And it showed. And I don't think England actually got very much wrong. I mean, certainly when they batted, they just had to keep going. And once that happens, the margins can be huge. There's quite a big margin between those two sides. And there's no disgrace, by the way, to lose to this India side. They're very, very good, special even. So wouldn't be too worried about wouldn't be too worried about any of the decisions England made yesterday, actually. In terms of selection, I would have done it differently, but I don't think it would have made a difference. About the toss, about the bowling changes, I think they should have bowled Moeen, but would any of it have made a difference? If I'm honest, I don't think so.
It'd be interesting if they'd done all of those things differently. As you say, I'm not sure bowling Moeen a couple of overs here or there would have changed the outcome of the game, but you wonder if I think there were 9 overs unused from their set of bowlers. If you could, there was probably a way. There was a way in for a spare batter. But there was a way in for a spare batter. Had they batted first, had they done all these things differently? But as you say, had they batted first and then it had rained in the second half, you'd be saying, surely you bowl first to control the rate. So they'd be interesting if they'd done a lot of those things differently. But as you say, the gulf was large. Neil Barani asks, I think slightly tongue-in-cheek, which was more symptomatic, Moeen stumping or Livingston sacrificing himself for Jofra? Was that, it kind of felt end game at 40-odd before, didn't it?
Well, I don't know that Livingston sacrificed himself. I don't know what Jofra was doing. I mean, Jofra Archer is one of the great bowlers that England have, and he's brilliant, but his cricket, apart from his bowling, needs a lot of work. His fielding's not up to it, and his running between the wickets yesterday was very poor indeed. So in that situation where Livingston was the last hope, and it was a pretty slim hope, Jofra, and it was Livingston's call, he's got that completely wrong.
He hit it nicely then, didn't he?
Yeah, he hit a couple of nice ones. Yeah, I mean, he's
on Moeen stumping. I saw you picked up on this.
I think it should have been a run out.
That's not
Yeah.
stumpy, is it?
I thought it was a run out. Yeah. I mean, again, none of this stuff matters. You know,
No, there's the badger in you. The
or
badger
runs
in you.
between. Well, I thought it was a run out. Yeah, and I thought he lost it, and it didn't look great. And you could probably find a metaphor there. I mean, it was probably the end of a career, wasn't it? You know, a career that I've admired and enjoyed hugely, but all these things
like
come
you
to an
pressed
end.
the wrong button on a sort of playing like PlayStation cricket, and you press run by mistake. When you lose, happens a lot when you lose sight of the ball on your thigh pad, doesn't it? Like you do actually see that a fair bit.
Yes, absolutely, it happens.
It's worse than the side there.
I just remember there was an easy Michael Vaughan's one of his final games for Yorkshire. He got lost coming out of the temporary dressing room they had at Edgbaston and ended up in one of the stands. And these things sometimes can be quite simple metaphors. Moen lost the ball, lost where he was. Again, these things all add up, I suppose. But
should we jump to this question?
Had he not been out then, would he have made a match-winning 100? I don't think so.
Should we jump to this question that seems appropriate on that? Lord Enzoni asks. He asked about Bairstow, but I suspect you could throw Moeen in the same category given the sort of distance between World Cups. Has Bairstow just played his last game for England?
I think there's a real chance of that, and again, that would sadden me. But you couldn't particularly say it was unreasonable at this stage. You know, I think he's batted all winter without reaching 50, or maybe he did actually right at the start. But it's 20 innings, 20 international innings since he made 50. 9 of those maybe are in tests. He's quite a long way up the order at this stage. We all know what he's been achieved. We all know what he's capable of. That's quite a lot of time, though. I just don't think the mobility that was there once is. He's obviously a brilliant ball striker. You know, I feel I'm team Johnny Bairstow all the time, but if he were really honest and this was the end, I don't think he could really complain, and he'll go and have a fantastic, lucrative career, no doubt, on the T20 franchise circuit. He is only 34, you know, and I don't think the eye has gone or anything like that. So I wouldn't say never, but it feels like a moment when you start to rebuild. And I don't know that you rebuild with 34-year-olds, or in Moen's case, I think a 37-year-old. Again, fantastic career, 2 World Cup medals, 200 Test wickets, 5 Test centuries. In many ways, changed the culture of English sport, certainly cricket, for the better. I mean, these things, they do nearly always end badly, don't they? I mean, I don't know how many people end in the way that Glenn McGrath or someone is the obvious one, or actually Stuart Broad. I mean, not many people have an ending like that. So, you know, it's still been a fantastic career. Maybe he has a year or so on the franchise circuit as well. But England, you know, I say this as Moen's biggest fan. They probably do need to move on. I mean, he hasn't scored any runs. He's not bowled for the last 2 matches. What's his role in the side? To be a good guy, calm in head. That's all important. It is genuinely. That's important. But so's getting lots of runs. And to be honest, I think England are at the stage where they would probably settle for someone getting some runs and wickets and being a bit of a dick. You know? I mean, David Warner, let's be honest, David Warner's had a fantastic career until very recently. And I don't know how many people think he's the best fella in the world, but he's a very good cricketer. And maybe the England environment has got a wee bit cosy in the last year or two.
There's a second part of a question here that I think tallies onto that. That's an interesting one. Daniel Chapman asks, so not so much the first half of England being shown up to be flat track bullies with. We've sort of covered that bit, but also with too many players playing one tournament too many.
Well, look, so on that,
after the event, but
when the central contracts, when the central contracts were signed, I'm pretty sure I said that some of these are very, very optimistic, and I thought that the ECB and Rob Key got panicked into making some decisions there. There was quite a lot of stuff in the media, which I'm sure was planted, saying, "Oh, you know." The classic one is Wood is going to sign a year-round central contract with the franchise. Well, he didn't. And he signed instead a 3-year, I think, central contract. with England, and that's a lot for a fast bowler of his age. And he has struggled to justify his place in white ball cricket, I think. He's had two somewhat disappointing World Cups. Now, obviously, he's a fantastic talent and special bowler, quickest bowler England have ever had. But um, yeah, it feels like they got bounced into these decisions. I mean, who else signed quite long contracts? I think Chris Woakes did. Has he played for England since?
Darren Milland's not played for England since the Woakes went to the Caribbean after the World Cup. Darren Milland's not played for England since the World Cup.
But I think Woakes signed a 2-year one, Milland signed a 1-year one. I mean, you could go through it. I presume Bryden Cast doesn't get paid for the period where he's suspended, but I haven't actually checked. I should have done. There are quite a lot of financial decisions there that seem like, are not particularly wise expenditure. Again, it's easy to be critical, and particularly at a moment like this. I want to say again, I don't know that there's any combination of England players that I would expect to beat India more times than not in T20 cricket at the moment. Very, very good India side. The thing that's held India back for a long time has been, I think, the over-emphasis on individual milestones and records. And I think Rohit's taken that away from this side. I think he's shown that it's more about the team winning. And that was the last piece of the jigsaw, really. They already have fantastic players. And I wouldn't be surprised if this, they haven't won anything yet, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if this started an era of Indian dominance. I mean, the next generation look even better. So there are one or two players within there that's not the case with. Bumrah is special. When the time comes to replace him, that would be very difficult. I'm sure we're going to look back on Bumrah as one of the greats. But yeah, I really do think that this could be a period of Indian dominance in all formats. There's pretty much no reason why it wouldn't. As I say, the last piece of the jigsaw was the team ethos, and I think Rohit deserves all the credit he'll receive if he has achieved that.
You touched on England's sort of off-field decisions. Phil Britt asks, looking at how poor England have performed in all formats over the last 12 months, is it time for Rob Key's tenure to come to an end? Ashley Giles went for much less, he says.
Hello, Phil. I know Phil. Phil works at Edgbaston, just to, so he might have a wee bit of a vested interest there up to a point. But I think he raises a reasonable point. I still think, unfashionable as it is, that Ashley Giles and to some extent Chris Silver were very harshly dealt with. Their job, they were told that their job was to keep the lights on for English cricket. So they embarked on a series of tours, and let's remember that Australia didn't play a single away test during COVID. England spent years on the road. They looked miserable, depressed, jaded, unprepared, but they did it because they were assured that, the results won't be held against you. The important thing is to keep the lights on. They obviously stunk the place out in the Ashes. Those two went. The Caribbean was even worse, actually. And I do think they were hard done by. I do. I think Rob Keys had quite a good couple of months, to be fair. I thought the squad that England selected for this tournament was coherent, logical, consistent. And I thought he did quite well in getting players back early from the IPL. You'll be, some of you thinking, well, quite right too. But it takes some doing. So I think he did that stuff quite well. I don't think he had a good period before that. I do think that England are a bit obsessed by celebrity coaches. I'm worried about that. I don't think the messaging around that's helpful. And just as an observation, have we given up on the Rooney rule? Does that not matter anymore? Anyway, so I do think Rob has some questions to answer. I think just off the top of my head, they had the worst ODI World Cup statistically, I think you could argue, of any team ever in terms of the heavy defeats. They've got to the semi-finals, but they've only beaten one full-member side, and that full-member side didn't make it to the Super 12s last time. And they're bottom of the World Test Championship right now. I don't know. There's a lot of feel-good around English cricket right now, and that's super. But I don't understand it. So, the buck obviously rests with Rob. He's a nice person. He's well-meaning. He's done some good things in the last couple of months. But I look at his appointments and I'm not at all convinced. But, I seem to be the only person in the world who's not convinced by Brendan McCullum. So.
What about, so Danny, that I guess on the same subject, Danny asked about Matthew Mott. City says since Matthew Mott took over, England men's white ball teams are 32 and 37 against full member teams. Are the available players not as good as we were told, or is poor coaching and captaincy to blame?
Well, I guess it's a huge question, isn't it? I think you'd have to say it's a combination of all the above. But they had a poor ODI World Cup. I thought they felt better here. They looked better in training. They seemed more united. I'm not convinced that there's a better option than Joss Butler, but he might need some help. Again, I think it's simplistic to just pick one person and blame them. And I think that in the same way that I said getting rid of Ashley Giles was simplistic and you'll just replace him and you have all the same structural problems in place, I think that's the same with Mott, to be honest. He doesn't seem out of his depth or hopeless to me at all. He seems fine. Whether that's the same as being the solution, I don't know. But once you've appointed him, I don't think he could be at all surprised if he gets chopped now. You know, he's had 2 pretty disappointing global tournaments in succession, and I can't see anything that they're doing that suggests it's about to turn the corner and get a lot better. But I don't see anything different about him now when he was appointed. And there was a question which I don't think we did. Someone was saying, I think the point of the question was, should his record in women's cricket have been made? I don't know if we included this one or not, but I don't mind them. I'm glad that someone asked that question. I mean, he does have quite a good record in men's and women's cricket. And there are a lot of similarities in sort of the management skills and what's required. But just to go through, you know, obviously as coach of the Australian women's team, he won everything there was to win. But in the men's side, I mean, I think he won the first Champions League. I can't remember what he won at in Australia, but he did well. He obviously had a period at Glamorgan. He had a period with Australia men. The track record was reasonable. I don't see him as being very different from Bayliss or McCullum. So I think that
he did also win, of course, his first World Cup with England as well. So that is on his CV.
He did, and so I think it would be simplistic to blame Matthew Mott. I just don't want to say I think he's the solution. Is that a reasonable? So I am sitting on the fence a little bit here.
No, I think you're right. It'd be wrong. I don't think it'd be fair to look at to sort of demean his credentials. At the same time, I don't think it could be fair to. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that after 2 fairly disappointing global tournaments, that you could be surprised if you were moved on from, given that England had won.
Right, but my worry is that we're going down the route. My worry is we're going down every route of saying change the captain, change the coach, and everything will be all right.
That's kind of sport, isn't it?
Well, it shouldn't.
I'm not saying it's right, but it's England aren't unique in that, is what I mean.
No, they're not. But cricket has gone that way belatedly, and I think that I don't want English cricket to enter the era of celebrity coaches. I think it's fantastic that they're utilising the knowledge of people like Andrew Flintoff, and it's fantastic also on a level that they're looking after him. Those are thoroughly good things. That seems to be a great deal for all parties. But there's a big gap between doing that and suddenly making someone head coach. Surely you need to have done some coaching. This is why I don't think McCullum was a good appointment. I don't. Absolutely inspirational figure as a player in Test cricket. Changed the game in England and New Zealand, certainly. It's not the same as being a coach. It's not the same thing. So they do have some thinking to do, but I don't, let's not have a knee-jerk reaction. Fine, if you want to get rid of Mott, that's absolutely fine. But have a better plan in place, because if you're just going to rearrange the faces and give them all another name, as Bob Dylan would put it, you're not going to get anywhere. And actually, he didn't inherit quite the handful of aces that everyone thought. Okay, so difficult situation. He inherits a side that's won the World Cup, the ODI World Cup in 2019. Everyone thinks English cricket is a great space. We didn't have Joe Faraja for quite a long time. He hasn't had Ben Stokes. Chris Wokes has gone. Plunkett's gone. Owen Morgan's gone. Jason Roy's gone. It's a transitional phase. And actually, it was almost a freakishly successful phase. So there has been a long period in English history when I think we thought that getting to a semi-final would be pretty good. But equally, I don't think anyone should hide behind that. And I fear they're going to. They're going to say, well, we got to a semi-final. That's pretty good. They smashed some associates sides. They beat an okay West Indies side. But, you know, if they're hiding behind the fact that they got to the last four, that's disingenuous.
Final one for you. On a broader note, I like this question. Steve Harris asks, a World Cup semi-final and no one there. Does it matter?
Yeah, it does matter. It is a concern, but just put my own perspective. You know, I go to England games everywhere, home and away. We learned that England were playing in Guyana about 24 hours before the game. We could get a flight, a charter flight, by the way, that the ICC were helping us with to get there. We could get on that. But we couldn't get back to get to the final if England got there. And also we couldn't stay in a hotel which would have been deemed safe by normal standards, you know. So the Foreign Office advice was pretty strong. So I don't blame people for not travelling. It was quite hard to get there.
Well, I guess if we take the question to be more structural than sort of anecdotally this game, does it matter that a World Cup semi-final is being arranged like that, whether that's for media or, I suppose, more importantly
I was coming on to say to make the point. I just wanted to make the point that even with all the help that we have, you know, with ICC allowing us to get on a chartered flight there, if not back, even with all those advantages, we weren't able to get there. So supporters groups, you know, cut them some slack. So absolutely no criticism. A lot of people would have loved to have been at that game and couldn't make it for very good reasons. It does matter. I'm uncomfortable with the criticism of India, if I'm honest. I'm very, very happy to criticise where I think it's fair. But India didn't have a great draw in this World Cup. They played on a dog rough pitch in New York 3 times, I think, yeah? It could have been a great leveller.
Yeah. And it was in a couple of...
Yep, right. So they got through that. As I understand it, the initial push for them to play in Guyana came from the Guyanese government. Sure, the pitch suited them, but a lot of pitches will suit India because they're really, really good at cricket. So I think you'll find the Barbados pitch will suit them too because they're really good at cricket. They won in Brisbane, didn't they? So the people are saying that it's all organised for India. You've got to make the distinction here. It's organised for the Indian TV market. Listen, I honestly think that the people who organise these things would, if they could get away with it, melt us all down for glue and sell us. Yeah, it's all about the money. It's not just about helping India. Now, there's no way that the semi-final playing regs were satisfactory. How on earth can you have one semi-final with a reserve day and one without? That's just nonsense. Equally, though, India have to go from Guyana on Thursday night to Barbados on Saturday morning. Okay, so they don't have a great run of doing that. I'm absolutely all for knocking the BCCI in India when it's appropriate, but every other country in the world signed up to this because they are addicted to the money that comes in from the India broadcast market. So there's been quite a lot of hypocrisy about this, and some criticism is absolutely fair. It hasn't been a brilliantly well-organised tournament. The pitch for the other semi-final was pathetic. It was pathetic. You know, there's no way that Afghanistan and South Africa should have been forced to play on that pitch in Trinidad. It's just not good enough. And by that, I mean it went up and down, and that is not a meritocratic way of measuring good teams. I thought South Africa were fantastic. They played so well on it. The batting, you know, was so brave. But it wasn't good enough. So there's been lots of points of concern in this World Cup, but I'm really glad they had it in the Caribbean and actually in America as well. I get the logic for that. And if there are some compromises that have to be made on the way, fine. But there were some details, you know, such as why the goddamn rush at this stage to get the semi-finals and the final in?
You might be able to answer this. Why is the final on a Saturday, not a Sunday?
Well, presumably because they wanted the reserve day for the final. But yeah, because you're playing in the rainy season in the Caribbean, there's a tropical storm forecast for Sunday. But it hasn't been very well organised. I mean, I can tell you, he probably won't mind, that Jonathan Trott is stuck in Trinidad and told he can't get back until maybe a couple more days, maybe even July the 1st, because there are no flights. Oh, come on now, ICC. It's not good enough. So there's all sorts of stuff that has been disappointing, inconsistent, and money oriented. But I'm very uncomfortable with saying that it's designed for the Indian team, because I don't think that's right. It's designed for the Indian broadcast market. It is not the same thing. The Indian players, I think, are exploited as much as any of us.
Well, of course, and also if India hadn't won their Super 8 group, and then we had been washed out in Guyana, then they'd have been out in the same way that England would have been out had it been washed out yesterday. There's no
they would.
no reserve day. We got and as you say, we ended up with the best two teams in the final. Go back to
we have ended up with the best two teams in the final and quite a lot of really compelling cricket. I mean, a couple of the Afghanistan games. Is this the last one of these I do? I presume I'm doing a review after the final, am I?
I am not your boss, but I assume so.
Everyone's my boss.
You're asking the wrong man.
Okay. Yeah, well, how we do Rotor Watch in that other podcast we do. Terribly successful. Anyway, so I suppose I should say thank you for all the questions during the during the tournament, because they've been really great, and the interactions. Thank you to Smile, who've genuinely been fantastic, and I honestly couldn't recommend the Caribbean more as a place to visit. Barbados, Antigua, St. Lucia, just try to outdo each other would be beautiful. And there's this is why it was important that the tournament was here. Cricket matters here. People care about cricket, but it needs some nurturing. And I don't mind them playing more games in America. Why wouldn't people in America fall in love with cricket? It's the best of games. So lots of good things, lots of things to celebrate. I can't remember many games I've enjoyed more than Afghanistan, Bangladesh, or Afghanistan, Australia. Even suspending the fact that, and people probably know what I think, that I'm not at all sure that Afghanistan should be played. But a really fun tournament in lots of ways, but some frustrations. But thank you all for the questions. It's really appreciated.